Barrow-in-Furness. So I will introduce Liz Critchley, who has worked within the heritage sector for 20 years. An experienced art and heritage manager, Liz joined Signal Film and Media in September 2021 from her role at the National Trust. The Sankey Collection is the first digital archive of this size she's worked with, alongside a team of volunteers, developing the Sankey Photography Archive website online and bringing together the collection for the first time. So that's wonderful for us anyway. And then John Harrison is going to actually do the talk, I think, tonight, isn't he, Liz? Yes, hello. And John is a retired mechanical engineer and computer-aided design developer who has also a lifetime passion for photography, which he pursued semi-professionally for a short while. Right, so that's the introductions done. So do carry on, please. It's over to you.
That's over to us. That's brilliant. So just checking everyone can hear us okay. Gilly, can you let me know if that's...
Oh, yes, you're fine.
That's great. That's fantastic. And you can all see the screen with that wonderful image of the R80 on the front.
It is amazing, yes.
Good, that's fabulous. Okay, so so my name's Liz Critchley, as Gilly's just said, and I've got John here on my left. Just pop your head in, John. There you go, if you can see us in the top corner. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Sankey collection, and then John is going to take you through a selection of different themes in the collection and also talk about the Sankeys. But I wanted to just start with a few of the incredible images from the Sankey archive, which give an idea of the eclectic and vast difference of themes within the collection. So I've got the fabulous R80 airship, captured by the Sankeys, launching from Walney Island sheds around 1920. I've got this Lowry-esque image on the right of ice skaters during a particularly cold winter. I've got, oh, hang on, it's just been a bit odd on me at the moment. There we go. Oh, I'll go back one. I've got the quite marvellously dressed youngsters of a Wesleyan primary school in the centre of Barrow-in-Furness. And then with a nod to Dave Day, which you might have heard about over the weekend, I've also got a quite dapper Mr. Gillett on his bike. So Seeing the North with Sankey was a 3-year project exploring the thousands of images taken by Edward, Raymond and Eric Sankey, covering about 70 years. Signal Film and Media partnered with Cumbria Archives, and I think Sue Benson is with us tonight from the archives for questions later, hopefully, and also the Sankey family. We've worked with a number of other organisations, local historians and local history groups, and the project aimed to conserve the collection, but also to share it with the local community. So very quickly, because John's going to tell you more about this later, Edward Sankey was the son of a horsekeeper, brought up next to a dockside rail yard, who became one of the region's best-known photographers. Over 70 years, through which they witnessed massive industrial growth and 2 world wars, Barrovian Edward and his sons Raymond and Eric dedicated their lives to capturing significant moments in everyday life in Barrow, Cumbria and the wider northwest. You can see their little shop there on the right, which they opened in the early 20th century. They also toured Cumbria by car, train, steamer, capturing picturesque scenes, local personalities and notable events. In addition to being a photographer, Edward had a shop, here we are, which sold various products and services. And many of the photographs were used to create postcards, which were sold throughout Cumbria and more widely, with peak production around the 1930s. So I'm just going to move on. So the themes are vast, from ship launches and airships to Lake District mountaintops, ordinary shop corners and streets to promenades and public buildings, working people to Winston Churchill, life through 2 world wars and women munition workers to handmade kit cars and lots of horses. John will tell you a little bit about that later. Edward and Raymond's work provides a visual chronicle of the 20th century in the furthest reaches of the Northwest, a time when naval and commercial shipbuilding dominated the turbulent first 50 years of this century. The thematic range of the imagery of the Sankeys is far-reaching. In a far corner of northern England, their photographs encompass universal themes. Pick a subject, for example, leisure, and their photographs could sit alongside those of French photographer Jacques-Henri Latique, who was noticed for his spontaneous and joyful images. And I've just included a couple there. Well, one here of the Central Beach in Blackpool, which the Sankey family took, and one of Latique on the right there. So I'll carry on. Like their contemporaries Bill Brandt and Eugene Adjet, they leave us with visual narratives that really do endure. We've got this brilliant picture of these kids. One thing you'll notice as you go through the archive is the amount of children that appear on the images. Just seems to be, full of children. It's just something you don't see as much now, I don't think, is just children on the streets and generally unaccompanied as well. Yeah. So here we are, Vickers Airship, which was the photo on the first slide that I showed you. And it's travelling over Duke Street here in Barrow-in-Furness. And Edward Sankey has taken this photograph on her first flight on the 19th of July, 1920, as she returns to her shed on Walney Island. For the spectator down below, this must have seemed otherworldly. Signals curator Phil Northcott considers that Edward Sankey may have been aware of surrealism. It could be a coincidence that the photographer captured the exact moment when the centre of the R80's hull aligned with the spire of St Mary's Church, or it may suggest elements of surrealist whimsy, a big balloon hovering above a big spike. Carry on. The comic tragic of the ill-fated outdoor Ramsden dock baths sinking into the docks. And also some of the attempts at early photoshopping. Just keep your eyes on the sheep, everybody, and you'll see them magically transported to a more scenic image. Through all these images, they've really preserved a record of this region's identity. So back to the project. During the 4 years of the Sankeys, with the first project that Signal Film and Media ran with Cumbria Archives, the negatives were restored and conserved, collection catalogued and digitised. There was a full engagement, interpretation, education programme. A publication was produced and we had a number of exhibitions, both in person and online, and films produced as well. On the right, that top slide on the right, you can see quite a few of us. I don't know if I'm in that picture, but I think John is somewhere here. The website, which launched in September 2023. The Sankey Online Archive currently has over 200,000 views. And last year, we also received funding from the Heritage Fund to work further with the collection, to explore some of the themes behind the collection and share the images with more people and places. I also just wanted to mention, because obviously John sat here to my right and he might nudge me, he said the volunteers have really been the driving force behind the cataloguing, research and wider sharing of the Sankey collection since 2019. I'm hoping we've got a couple of our volunteers with us tonight as well. From the 60 original sign-ups, a core group of 20 people spent thousands of hours collating these documents. They helped put together 7 online exhibitions, co-curated doc museum shows, and also produced a calendar for 2022 containing many images, which raised over £300 for the British Heart Foundation. And I just have to mention that, as you can see in the Zoom below, a lot of this was done through the COVID epidemic as well, which in some ways was awful, but in some ways was actually really good for researching a programme because you had lots of time on your hands, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, so just a couple of my favourite images just to finish this part of the presentation. We have the number 7584 on the left, which a woman on the left stares towards the camera next to a pile of paper pulp. Has she stopped for a moment, or has she been brought in from her work to illustrate the beautiful light coming through the window, which one of the Sankeys has spotted to create this image? The picture on the right, again women working, but this time making munition shell casings in the shipyard. They also stop for a moment to regard the photographer. Central to the images the Sankeys produced as commercial photographers are people and communities. Their photography highlights not only striking locations and subjects, but also offers an insight into the human condition. So I just wanted to end my part of the presentation with a quote by American photographer Gary Winogrand, is that I like to think of photography as a two-way act of respect. Respect for the medium by letting it do what it does best, describe, and respect for the subject by describing it as it is. A photograph must be responsible for both. And hopefully, as John takes you through the rest of the collection, that quote will ring through. I'll just pass you on. That's okay.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm John, and as Liz has explained, I'm going to try and give you a bit more of an in-depth look at the collection. So to start, I'll introduce you to the three gentlemen who are the main protagonists of the photographic process and photographic business. There's Edward, Raymond and Eric. They were a father and son trio, and they were working from the 1900s right through to the 1970s. So they provided, through the collection, that built up an astonishing range of social history and record of the area and wider area. For those of you who may not know, Barrow-in-Furness sits at the end of the Furness Peninsula, which is on the west coast of the United Kingdom, which you can see there in the little box on the left. And you can also see that we are located directly below the English Lake District. So we've got, although Barrow's quite an industrial town, we are surrounded by beautiful
Yeah.
we're quite surrounded by beautiful sort of countryside, coastline scenery, and Barrow's got a lot of virtues because of that, and that's the Sankey family, the Sankey photographers took advantage of that during their career. Much of their work was done around Barrow and the Fylde coast, but this covered the whole area of the Lake Districts out to the Isle of Man and various other places. We are another point that will come visible in the pictures as we go through them is that Barrow at the time was linked to the Isle of Man and to Fleetwood and Morecambe by ferries. So there's a lot of travel between these areas by sea, which doesn't happen today. During their careers, the Sankeys photographed a wide and very eclectic range of images, as Liz has already alluded to. There's everything in the collection: horses, cars, people working, motorcycle races, landscapes, ship launches, industry, street scenes, and just about anything else you care to think of. But along the way, they also managed to record a great deal of social change. Many of the images are very important because they record scenes that no longer exist. For example, on the left there, we have a picture of Paxton Street in Barrow. That disappeared in the early 1970s during a major town redevelopment. And on the right, we've got a picture of the Great Wheel, which used to dominate Blackpool. It was built in 1896 and lasted just 32 years. Next to it, you can see the Winter Gardens, which does still exist. And you may know that from Come Dancing Fame. It's one of the venues for the BBC's Come Dancing TV show these days. So it's an amazing record, really, of lots of things that have vanished. Many of the pictures show a way of life and dress and social behaviour that is very different from today. In the lower left, in these images, you can see people in the flats in Barrow, which were very much a working class area, built for the workers at the shipyard. And you can see them there with all the washing hanging out. To the right, there's quite a high society function going on. This was like a ladies' tea party. To the bottom right, you've got a typical street scene, and in the bottom left, you've got people being entertained on the beach by a group of people known as Piros, which you can see there. These were a very popular form of entertainment back in the day, and they used to tour around the country, setting up a little stage and giving shows to the general public for a few pence for a seat. During the lifetime of the Sankeys, they witnessed amazing changes, massive changes. They witnessed huge growth in industry, huge changes to transport. They lived through 2 world wars, and they witnessed many changes. So going from horsepower to tram power and beyond to motor cars. Edward Sankey started the business, and he had quite a remarkable life. He was a son of a groom for the Furness Railway Company, which is something I'll cover later, and he lived next to the Dockside Rail Yard. In the 1891 census, at the age of 16, Edward is listed as a printer and compositor. But in 1895, Edward had opened his first printing business. By 1901, he was listed as a printer and paper merchant and employer. And by 1911, he is a letterpress printer, stationer, shopkeeper, and employer. He had two sons, Raymond, who was born in 1905, and Eric, born in 1908. And he opened his first shop on Ramsden Square in Barrow, and later moved a few hundred yards to a shop in Duke Street, which is one of the town's main sort of thoroughfares and main shopping streets. He eventually ended up with 3 shops in town, and his sons Raymond and Eric joined the business as they grew older. We've got very few images of Edward in the collection. I think actually this might be the only one, or there might be a couple more. But this one shows Edward with his son Eric sitting on a bench in the nearby town of Newby Bridge in around 1910. They were well travelled as a family. They took photos all over the Lake District, in Blackpool, the Isle of Man, Ireland, and even across in France. The picture in the bottom right there is in France. And we've got the Laxey Wheel in Isle of Man. The bridge bottom left is the Menai Bridge in Wales. And of course, we've got Blackpool and the Lakeside Steamer. The bulk of the images, as I said before, are taken from around Barrow, Heysham, Morecambe, and the Fylde coast. This map that I've shown here indicates all the sort of major areas where we've located photographs in the collection. You can see they're very widely scattered across the Isle of Man, Ireland, and you might just notice that there's a dot in the middle of the Irish Sea. This is not a mistake on our part, because the Sankeys were very keen on photographing boats and ships and other marine vessels, and there's many pictures in the collection of ships taken out at sea, as in this example here. This one shows a paddle steamer Mona, and it's obviously been taken from another paddle steamer, because you can see its paddle wheel cover in the bottom left of the picture. Just a little bit about the collection itself. In 2018, the Sankey family made a very generous decision to donate their entire collection to the Barrow and Cumbria archives. They wanted to preserve it and make it accessible to everyone. It was originally housed in a lock-up garage, and I think it's fair to say that when Signal Film staff first went to see it, they were amazed by the quantity of material it contained. And there's just a few examples there of the racks and racks of materials that were in the collection. After the decision was made to donate the collection, Signal Film and Media became the project leaders, and in 2018, the Seeing the North with Sankey project began in earnest, after winning some support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Cataloguing the collection started just before lockdown and continued in earnest during lockdown via various online resources, as Liz showed in her introduction. That was quite a learning curve for us all. Previously, I don't think I'd ever used Zoom more than once in my life. All of a sudden, I was spending just about every day on it, communicating with the rest of the team, and it turned out to be a really fascinating process. The physical collection is now in safe storage at Cumbria Archives, where the highly flammable nitrate negatives are in deep freeze and the glass plate negatives are in a carefully controlled environment. Postcards and other such images are stored in the Barrow archives. Everything has been conserved, repackaged, digitally archived, and every image has been researched and digitally catalogued. The final stage was the creation of a dedicated website where all the digital assets are now available to view by the public, and it's free. Within the collection, there are many types of media. We've got glass plate negatives, nitrate negatives, which are quite dangerous, as you may know, because they're a fire hazard. Cellulose acetate negatives, we've got cash books, sales books, silver gelatin prints, postcards, and photo albums. There are many photo albums which contain hundreds of pictures within themselves. In total, we have around 10,000 unique images or unique scenes in over 13,000 images. So it is quite a vast collection. Often within the collection, we find the same image in different formats. An image can be in an album, on a postcard, or it can be a negative. And we can have any combination of those for a particular image. In this case, we've got all three. So we've got the album prints, top left, the postcard, and the glass plate negative on the right-hand side there. Not all the negatives and prints are in the best condition, which is a shame, but for many years they were stored in less than ideal circumstances, and some have suffered as a consequence. In this example, you can see that the negative on the left there has deteriorated, but the printed version is better. And this is often the case. So one form of media will have survived better than the other. But fortunately, the majority are in very good condition. And the good and even the poorer images reveal an amazing level of detail when they are enlarged. As part of a physical exhibition promoting the collection, some of the images were blown up to nearly life size, which filled a wall with them. And we were amazed by the quality of the prints taken from the negatives. You could see all sorts of details in them. It was really, truly amazing. You will notice that the images show the edges of the negatives, and they are also shown warts and all. What I mean by that is we've not tried to disguise or hide any of the defects in the images. At the start of the project, it was decided to present the negatives and the other media as it was found. Consequently, the edges of the negatives are included, and no editing or digital cleaning has been done to any of the images or any of the other media. So, in the following sections, I'd like to go into the collection in a bit more detail and look at some of the many subjects and areas covered by the Sankey images. Excuse me, getting a bit dry. The first section I'd like to look at is the production of postcards. This was a very important area for the Sankey family and the Sankey business. The postcards were posted all over the world, and in themselves, the messages on the back reveal fascinating snippets from people's lives. Today, Sankey postcards are still collected by enthusiasts, and we have transcribed many of the messages found on the reverse of the cards. For example, this card is written in Swedish and translates to "Thank you for card and greetings, SKW. It's the weekend here, but the weather is unusually cold, rainy and windy. Hope it gets better tomorrow." Was nothing unusual there for the Lake District. So, and you can see that that was sent to Herr Kurt Benzinger in Stockholm. And that was on the 22nd of June, 1929. The second example, this time it's a picture of Isleth Church, which is a local church near us, which still survives. And the message reads, "Newfield Hotel, Seathwaite, Barrow-in-Furness. We have been staying here over Easter and are delighted with this part of the Lake District, which is very unspoilt, and the walks are lovely. Unfortunately, the weather has been very cold, but we have had very little rain. We shall be sorry to return to Callaham on Friday. Hope you are well. Yours sincerely, KFL Widden." Again, weather features heavily, as it does on most people's postcards. At least it's not raining, which it often does in the Lake District, and they are obviously enjoying their stay and enjoying their walks. So in addition to his talents as a photographer, excuse me, Edward was a very talented engineer and an innovator. He designed and developed a specialist printing machine for the production of his postcards. Here we have three views of the machine. The lower middle shows Edward on the right with his sister Ellen and her husband Henry Rigg. He was also a local businessman. And on the right there, you can see the machine with an operator using it in action. In 1923, the machine was successfully patented in England, France, America, and Germany. And we have records, as you can see, of the 3 foreign patents, but unfortunately, we don't have one for the English one. The machine greatly increased the speed of postcard production. With it, he could print 500 postcards per day. It also allowed him to produce runs of cards for other publishers. You may be wondering why he needed this speed. The need for speed was quite important. Excuse me. So I've lost myself. Beg your pardon. As I said, the need for speed was important. It allowed pictures to be taken of tourists boarding the local steamers during day trips to places like Blackpool or on the Windermere steamers, which you can see in these examples here. The pictures were taken, developed, printed, and then sold as souvenirs to the day trippers on their return. This was all done the same day, a very quick turnaround, especially when you consider the equipment they were working with. If you take a closer look at the steamer in the bottom right corner there, it becomes quite obvious that passenger overcrowding was not a problem back in the early 1900s. I'm not so sure that I would like to be on that steamer, but they're obviously enjoying themselves. The Sankeys, at least the fathers and sons, were very keen on their cars. They owned many over the years. They purchased their first car, which was a Morris Cowley, in 1925. Here you can see that car at the top of Dunmel Raise, which is a high mountain pass in the Lake District. And as you can also see, they went up there in the snow, something that a few people today will struggle to do. Having cars gave them a lot of advantages, and cars feature heavily in many of the images of the collection. And you'll also find that many of the cars are photographed in treacherous or remote locations, a bit like the one we can see here. Owning cars from early on in their careers allowed them to travel much easier with all their equipment and to go much further afield. This was especially important in the early years when you considered that the equipment they were using was quite bulky and large, such as the large tripods and the large plate cameras, along with all the glass plates required, which were very heavy. And there's just a few examples of them with their cameras. And the top right image is quite interesting. It's a very large plate camera. This set of pictures shows various Sankey-owned motor cars and that they liked a bit of adventure. They didn't mind rough tracks, remote lanes, and even driving on the beach. And they obviously like their cars because they often pose them within the image. There are many images of cars taken in sort of obviously posed positions. From the 1925 onwards, the output of their work became more focused on the Lake District and included their Tour of the Lakeland series of postcards, which were sold to the ever-increasing numbers of visitors in the area. As well as their own cars, they photographed many other different kinds of motor vehicles throughout the years. Some of them were quite unusual, like this particular number here, which is obviously a hand-built job, and I had to include this in the exhibition because it's one of the team's favourite pictures and always pops up. But we really like the car and the expressions of the people in the car. I stated earlier that the Sankeys recorded many social changes over the years. Whether this was a conscious decision or just a consequence of their long careers, we don't really know, but the collection is now a valuable historical resource. A good example of changes are the changes in road transport over the years. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the horse was still a major form of transport. There are many horse-related pictures in the collection. As you can see here, horses carrying goods, horses pulling large logs on the right there, and horses carrying people in carriages at the seafront. The picture in the middle is quite interesting. It shows Ocean Road on Walney Island, This road today is a major thoroughfare, very busy and always lined with traffic. But you can see back in the early 1900s, the only thing they had to worry about was kids in the streets. It's a very large road with not a lot happening. Things soon changed though. Traction engines and lorries soon started to take over the work of carrying goods, and trams and motor buses took over the work of carrying passengers in bulk. Eventually, motorcycles and cars started to become ever more popular and cheaper, and therefore more frequent. There's a few examples of cars and motorcycles in this screen. But eventually, as we all know, the car won the race and became king of the roads. Here's a typical scene at a popular local beauty spot taken in the early 1960s. And not only had cars become popular, so had caravans. Visits to the seaside were very popular subjects. Seaside holidays were hugely popular, with thousands of people visiting the various coastal resorts, such as Blackpool, shown here. There are many, many photographs of beach and holiday scenes. Beach scenes, again, are an excellent indicator of changing times. This picture was taken in the early part of the 20th century. As you can probably see, even on what is obviously a hot summer's day, everyone on the beach is fully dressed, including hats. Although digging pits and making sandcastles is obviously a timeless pastime. The beach is riddled with holes, if you look. But thanks to the archive and the collection, we can time travel first to 1920, where you can see the length of the skirts are getting shorter. Then on to the 30s. And finally, onto the 1960s. So the collection gives a very wide, broad range of attitudes and social attitudes throughout the years. Most of those holidaymakers in those pictures will probably have travelled by trains. And there are many many pictures of railway-related subjects in the collection. Everything from engines to signal boxes to the trucks and carriages the trains pulled, the staff, and all manner of other things to do with railways. The Furness, for many years, Barrow and the wider area was served by its own railway network. This was called the Furness Railway. This provided vital goods transportation within Barrow, supporting its shipyards, docks, ironworks, and other industries. And we can see a map of the network here. It also linked Barrow to other centres of mining and industry along the west coast up to Whitehaven in the north, and it linked Barrow to Carnforth and adjoining lines in the east. The Furness Railway was very extensive within Barrow itself. As I said, it was used to connect all the various industries together and to move goods and materials between them all. Here are some of the sidings along Barrow's dock sides. And as you can see, there are many, many wagons and lines along the dockside, and these radiated out throughout the town. These sidings are now long gone, unfortunately, and the site is now a car park and a supermarket. The Furness Railway also linked up with the ferries I mentioned earlier to Blackpool and Fleetwood and the Isle of Man. This provided access into the Lake District via Lakeside, Coniston, and the Ravenglass and Eskdale Miniature Railway, all of which helped to boost a growing tourist industry. These rail links allowed travellers to catch steamers from Blackpool, Fleetwood, and the Isle of Man, and they could then carry on their journeys by rail into the Lake District. And these two pictures show a couple of the advertising posters of the time for various day trips. The Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway at Eskdale, so the miniature railway at Eskdale, which I just mentioned, was another popular tourist destination for holidaymakers, and it was also a favourite subject for the Sankeys. There are many images of this in the collection, and it's still a popular tourist destination today. You'll still find photographers prowling around the stations and standing on all the bridges of the lines in anticipation of seeing a train go past. Obviously, because Barrow is and has been a shipbuilding town for many years, ships, submarines and boats and all the vessels feature very heavily in the collection. Barrow is famous as a shipbuilding town, and there are over 900 photographs of ships, boats and other vessels in the collection. And Barrow has built many famous vessels, such as the Oriana shown here. You can see on the slipway on the left and nearly completed on the right in the docks. This, at its time, was one of a very prestigious boat to sail on. As well as the ships, we have 500 launch photos. On the left is the launch of Arcades on the 1st of December 1936. And I've put a little insert in there to show that there were other photographers as well working next to the Sankeys to record the occasion. On the right is the launch of the TSS Arama on the 20th of May 1924. This image was created by Raymond Sankey on his first professional photography job. In a later article, he recalled how he was nearly struck by a large piece of flying timber during the launch. As you can see, they didn't worry about things hitting people. They allowed people to stand very close to the launch back in the day. However, this didn't put him off. He took 50 more pictures of this event and continued as a photographer. Sorry, he took 30 pictures of this event and he continued as a photographer for 50 years. Get my numbers mixed up. Sorry. As you may know, Barrow is also famous for building the country's submarine fleet. The very first submarines built were the Nordenfelds. These were built in the 1880s for Turkey and Russia, but they were not successful and were soon scrapped. This is the first British submarine, or sorry, I should say it's one of the first British submarines. These were the Holland class, built under license from the Holland Torpedo Boat Company of America. The picture shows Holland 2, which was launched in 1902. And here are a couple more submarine launches. The top left is the launch of the submarine Otis on the 31st of August 1928. And we'll go forward in time to the launch of the submarine Rockwell on the 27th of July 1936. As you see, submarines don't really change that much over the years. But the method of launch has. It's done very differently today. This picture shows an Astute-class submarine on the ship lift at the current Barrow shipyard. The lift raises and lowers vessels into and out of the water, and it's a lot less exciting than the old way. As well as vessels built in the shipyard, there are many pictures of other types of boats. Sailing boats, trawlers, ferries, tugs, rowing boats, and any other watercraft that you care to name really has been recorded in the collection. This is just a very small selection. Other subjects include social occasions and special events around the town and further afield. This one shows the opening of the King's Hall in Barrow on the 12th of September 1907. This building does still stand today. And here, the Sankeys have recorded Mr. Winston Churchill's visit to Barrow on the 25th of September 1912. He arrived on a ship called the Enchantress, and here he is disembarking onto the dockside. Mr. Churchill came back again in 1915. This picture shows a stern-looking Winston Churchill striding out from the vicar's main offices. The lady on the right looks quite worried, while the young girl is more interested in the photographer. Over the years, royalty has visited our area on several occasions. In this picture, King George V is visiting the Vickers projectile factory at Catton Road, Morecambe, near Lancaster. The Lancaster Daily Post reported this event, describing the king passing through lines of discharged soldiers now serving the king at the works. The next day, the king came to Barrow. That's the 17th of May. And here he is inspecting the Vickers engineering shop with Admiral Lawrence E. Powers on his right and James McKechnie on his left, who is the managing director of Vickers at the time. This picture, taken on the same visit, is an excellent candid shot of Queen Mary conversing with Sir Trevor Dawson, and there's a naval officer listening very intently behind them. In May 1911, the Sankeys recorded Britain's first naval airship as it came out of its build shed in Barrow. It was called the Mayfly by the locals because it may fly and it may not. It was watched by a massive crowd, which you can see on the right there, even though it was 5:30 in the morning. And another photographer on the not-so-safe-looking temporary platform to the left of the upper picture. Also, please take a note of the keel on the underside of the airship. Beg your pardon. The trials of this airship did not go well. And after modifications, the airship came out of its hangar again on September 1911. This time, the keel, as you can see, has gone, and there were various other modifications made. But there was a bit of wind, and this happened. There are many more images of this disaster in the collection, and these photographs were sent all around the world. Not the best advert for British engineering. However, they carried on with airships, and it wasn't the end of the story. This is the airship R80, which flew much more successfully in 1920, and this is it again emerging for the first time from its build shed. As I said before, we live to the south of the Lake District, and not surprisingly, landscapes feature heavily in the collection. Here are a couple of examples. And we've got Burnthwaite Farm at Wasdale Head in the Great Gable. Wasdale Head with Great Gable behind, and we've got the Hughes Landing in Windermere with a very pretty looking little yacht. Owning a car gave the Sankeys easy access to the Lake District and surrounding areas. They took advantage of this and made a Tour of Lakeland series of postcards. This was a novel idea at the time and was very popular with tourists and visitors to the region. And here you can see a few examples of their work. We've got Wastwater from Great Gable, we've got the Scaffold Range in the background at the top from Great Gable again, Langdale Valleys and Pikes, and Ullswater from Snybarrow. These are all glass plate negatives. But as I said, they made postcards from a lot of the pictures, and in this screen you can see the original negative and the resulting postcard. And you can see that they've cropped the negative to fit the postcard format. And also, quite often, they added the caption to the bottom of the postcard. If you can think of a subject, it will be represented in the collection. I think you could probably find a picture for any subject. For example, here we have bridges. There are many, many bridges in the collection, including this bridge of Burke's Bridge on the left, with photographers on the rocks in the foreground, and you can see them clearer in the little inset there. You can still find photographers standing in that exact spot today. Top right is the Corby Railway Viaduct over the River Eden, and this one below is a picture of the Buccleuch Dock Bridge. It was a lifting bridge which used to go over the entrance to the docks in Barrow. This, unfortunately, has long gone, so this is another important historical record. Heavy industry is also very well represented. Barrow was an industrial town, and Barrow had many different industries during its history. On this slide, we can see the Barrow Electricity Works on the left, which was built right in the centre of town, unbelievably. And here, and next to it, is the giant grain silos and the Walmsley Smith corn mill, which is also in Barrow. And this slide shows the Wellington pit at Whitehaven. This is a large coal pit. And if you look very closely at this image, you can see lots of people on the spoil heaps around the base of the pit workings. You can see them on the spoil heap in the centre there. You can see people to the left and right of the pit. And these people are gathering coal from the spoil heap, which they could do for free. Also, in this picture at the bottom, something that caught our eye and was a bit of a shock, was the fact that there's a little girl there walking around in bare feet, which was quite an eye-opener at the time when we spotted it. There are many pictures of important buildings and architecturally important buildings in the collection. There's also lots of photographs of housing estates and sort of ordinary sort of dwelling places. In this picture, we can see a picture of the Colosseum, which existed in Barrow, but which now has unfortunately been knocked down, which is a real shame. And we can also see on the right a thing called a leading light, which is a kind of navigational light. There were several of these along the shorelines of Barrow at the time, but this is the only remaining one, and it does still stand today, and is a popular subject for modern photographers. The leading light was built in 1875. People obviously feature very heavily in the collection. There are many portraits and groups of people. The first portrait in this group is simply titled Rig. We have no other information than that. In the centre, we have an old gentleman called Old Pete. He was a chap who lived in Ramsey on the Isle of Man, and he was quite a local celebrity at the time. The unnamed couple on the right, again, we don't know, but we suspect they may be part of the Sankey family. Below, we have the group of ladies in Tim's garden party, and to the right bottom is the staff of Moxon's, which was a local shop at the time, and they're on their way to their local outing. So they must obviously ask the Sankey to record the event. As well as people, we have some fantastic street scenes. Often the same street has been photographed many times through the years, and this gives a really great record of how things have changed. There's three sort of typical street scenes on the top there, but on the bottom, the lower three images show Barrow's Duke Street and Town Hall, taken from roughly the same location in 1908, 1940, and the early 1960s. You can see the buildings on the left have remained mostly unchanged, while the right-hand ones have undergone major changes. The position of the statue has also moved over the years. And the buildings on the left, the unchanged ones, are still there today. Sorry. Some of the images leave you wondering why it was taken, such as this one of a lone cyclist on Walls Drive. You can almost see the cyclist. And really, I can't think of any reason why this picture was taken. Yet others are just simply beautiful images, such as this one, which has really captured the lighting of the evening sun nicely on the sheep and the water with the ship in the harbour. So, as you can see from this short selection, the Sankey collection is an amazing resource. All the pictures you have seen tonight are available via the Sankey Photography Archive, which was the ultimate goal of the Seeing the North with Sankey project. It is an amazing online resource and free to use under the Creative Commons licensing rules. The actual copyright of the images is held by Cumbria Archive. To access the archive, all you need to do is follow the link shown below. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was okay. And do you have any questions?
That was fabulous. Thank you so much, Liz and John. That was really interesting and such a wonderful archive. I've got a couple of questions just to kick off, and I'd encourage our audience also to place any questions into the chat, and we'll pick up with them. Just a couple of things occurred to me as you were showing the wonderful slides. On the picture of the cameras, there was a motion picture camera. I just wondered if you had any of the moving image footage that the Sankeys were making.
No.
Interestingly, was that the one that you saw on the airship?
It was the slide that showed all of the different cameras in use. There's about 6 pictures, I think, that John showed.
Yeah, there were. We don't think the Sankeys used moving pictures, but there were newsreel photographers at these events, and there are some newsreel record archived in the Pathé News archives. which you can find online.
So the launch of the R80, there is pathé footage of that exact launch, and you can kind of, there's images that the Sankeys took that you can also find on that moving image. It's remarkable actually, if you do search for it, if you've got time. It's a launch of the R80 on pathé.
Right. And the other question I had was really around colour, because I just wondered if any of the later negatives are in colour, or whether the Sankeys stayed very much with black and white throughout their career.
They did. They stayed with black and white. Yeah, they were all black and white. We haven't got any colour. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why. I think Peter might know that one. Yeah, Peter, are you on? I don't know if you're on, but could you know why they stuck to black and white? I think one of our volunteers might be on. He knows.
Yeah, the Sankeys produced various books over the years, and some of the images in those books have been coloured, but I can't recall seeing any actual coloured negatives or slides.
No, they didn't. They didn't use them. They just stuck to black and white.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that in, I think your part, Liz, one of your slides mentioned that you'd had a commission with Nicky Bird. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how maybe you've made the Sankey archive relevant, perhaps to contemporary people and school children through things like the commission.
Yeah, so I mean, we did a lot with the project, but we are also working with groups at the moment on the new project. But with Nicky Bird's exhibition, we actually used images from the paper mill. So it was a local paper mill, and we had a series of images within the Sankey collection of women workers. So Nicky worked with a group of women who'd actually worked there in the 1960s. Well, some that had worked in the 1960s, and also other women. And we really researched that kind of experience of being in the paper mill. And she blew those images up. This is the one that John was talking about before, to lifelike size. So when you walked in that gallery, you could actually come face to face with somebody from history in those images. So that was absolutely fabulous. But we also had some more contemporary images alongside them, which showed the experiences of other women who worked in that paper mill, but at a later time.
And my final question before we hand over to our audience, if any, or I'm sure Gilly will have a question or two, is just around the Sankeys' motivations for their photography, because obviously a lot of it was being done for commercial reasons, either for clients such as Vickers and clearly for themselves in terms of the postcards. And I just wondered if they were also just photographing for personal pleasure, or whether there was always a commercial motive.
We think they did photograph for personal pleasure, or at least I do. A lot of the images were not particularly commercial. And there were a lot of, pictures of like people in the collection, which, I mean, there might have been commissions, but we don't know. But yeah, many of the images were obviously taken just for pleasure, I think. I believe so.
Yeah, I think though that ultimately at the end of the day they had a shop. They wanted to make money from the images, and I mean that printing press was quite remarkable because, well, sorry, the kind of when they went onto the boats and took pictures, because they could wipe that negative clean and take another one and take another one and take another one, which is why we don't have copies, we don't have negatives of those images that they took on the boats, because they were wiping them clean, taking another one and pocketing the cash. Thank you very much. Yeah, but I'm sure they must have got some pleasure, because why would they have started in the first place? As John says, there's got to be some kind of pleasure in it, and some of their compositions to me show that they're quite significantly beautiful photos. So they do show that they enjoyed photography and they enjoyed picking out those beautiful images as well. And
the fact they carried on for 70 years. They were all three, dedicated to what they were doing, I believe. And I think some of it is accident. I mean, I get really moved by some of those images of people, like the people in the collection really stand out to me. I find it very, very moving, and I don't think they did that on purpose always. I think that's kind of the coincidence that you do see these children and these women, and there's one particular one that stands out in the bus depot where you've got a young man who's obviously kind of lost his leg, and they bring those out as well, and they bring out the humanity in the images. And I think that's what I wanted to talk about in my presentation, was that's clearly there throughout the collection.
Yeah, that comes across really well. Just quickly, actually, do any of the Sankey printing devices exist at all that you've come across?
Don't know.
I've not come across one. No,
No.
not to my knowledge. We should really remake one. We keep talking about that. So we're just embarking on a new project at the moment. We're working with a series of young people and another artist as well. But I think actually as part of this next project, we should recreate it.
We do have drawings, don't we?
Yeah, we have
We do have some
drawings.
drawings
Yeah,
of the machine, so it may be possible.
I think it'd be a really fun thing to do. Yeah.
Just wondered if you had any questions, Gilly, before we conclude.
I was wondering, seeing they were the Edward the First, well, the father was brought up with horses. I was wondering if they photographed the famous Appleby Horse Fair at any time.
Don't think so, no.
No, we haven't got any of the Appleby horses, which is unusual because there are so many horses, and I think they take a picture of a horse like you would take a picture of your BMW today. So it does surprise me they didn't go up there actually. I haven't seen. There's nothing I've got of the horse.
I can't recall seeing any.
No,
There are some very odd missing sections in the collection. It's like when you look at the pictures they took around Barrow, which was their hometown. Some areas are heavily photographed, but yet there's other areas which had significant industry or buildings on them which just don't feature at all. So we've never quite been able to figure that out. Whether they just didn't like those places or not, we don't know. But there are odd gaps in the collection.
Yeah. And they were commissioned as well. Like some of the images. I think Sue Benson's on the call with us as well from the archives, and I think there are some images that they were commissioned to take. So Vickers would commission the Sankeys to take images of inside the sheds and on the launches. So they weren't always taken by them. They were asked to do it sometimes.
Did they have any pictures of the iron mines around? Because there's Milham and there's also, well, I know the mines around Bekermet and all that way.
Yes.
Yeah, there's mines, many mines. Yeah, lots of the mines. And also obviously Barrow famous for its iron works as well and steel works, and there's images of that too. Well, strangely, we don't have as many inside of Vickers, do we? Of like the shops and stuff, the factory inside. So, but perhaps wartime and stuff, they didn't allow them in. So.
Yeah, there are many images of the iron works all up and down the west coast and the mines. It's just so many. It's impossible to pick out really. But I mean, there's many images of the ironworks at Barrow, because Barrow for quite a long time had the largest iron and steel works in the world.
Yeah. Well, the quality of iron ore in that area was very fine.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, we have marvellous hematite.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably brings us to the end. It's just coming up to 7 now. So I'd just like to thank you both for sharing the archive with us. I think a lot of us will be going to the website straight after this this Zoom call. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing how you continue to make the images available and relevant in a contemporary sense. So thank you, John and Liz, and thank you, Gilly, for arranging this evening. The historical group has a series of talks coming up over the next month or so and into September. And check the RPS website for those. We'll also send a link to the recording from this evening's talk for those of you that maybe didn't make it this evening. Those of you that are here, thank you, and you can catch up with us again if you'd like to. But we'll also include links to the upcoming talks as well. So thank you both, and thank you, Gilly, and thank you to the audience for staying with us this evening. Good night, everyone.